Hi, everybody. So unfortunately, I cannot make it to the general meeting. However, I will, this is a pre-recorded finance info session that I'll be presenting right now. And similar to last time's info session, a lot of this one will be just going over procedure. And what's new is I've added a lot of more simple, basic definition-based stuff that I think is very important for you to know and for this distinction to be made. This stuff you can all skip over. So yeah, to begin with the definitions. So I think that it's very important to know the definitions in terms of the different types of disbursements, or the different things that different types of disbursements that could be made, and the different bodies that we'd be receiving money and disbursements from. The first off is TGIF. We all know TGIF. It's the UCLA funding body that provides us a lot of their money for sustainability projects. TGIF is the one that enforces some of the rules, like no Amazon, no Walmart. You can't buy things like t-shirts with their money. And this is who we submit our fund applications to directly for the most part. And this is also who we submit in terms of disbursement requests and requisition forms, who we submit the emails to. Similarly, SGA is Student Government Accounting, which is the UCLA student-focused department that actually processes the requisition forms and the disbursement requests and invoices. So they're the ones who do a lot of the actual logistics in terms of paperwork, getting things to be signed. And currently they are severely backlogged due to being short-staffed. And as a result, right now, they're working through all of the previous disbursements and forms that they've received, and they're doing so in chronological order. Unfortunately, they did not provide a very solid timeline as to how long it would take for them to get through everything. However, they did say that they're hiring some new student workers, and they're trying to get through everything by the end of the year. Yeah, so below is the process flow for requisition from a TGIF account, which is just when you get a disbursement request, when you need to withdraw money because you purchased something. What ends up happening on our end is we email it to TGIF, then TGIF approves it, they send that to Student Government Accounting, SGA processes it, and then from there they mail out the check back to you. On the other end, we have the MAE, which is the Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering. This is the academic department under which BHS is registered. That's the School of Engineering, and it's where we have our general fund money. And as we know, general fund money is less restrictive. It can be used for more things in different ways compared to TGIF money, which is more tied to whatever we requested in the fund request. And UCLA Accounts Payable is the UCLA employee-focused department that processes withdrawals from the general fund. So TGIF goes through SGA, general fund goes through UCLA Accounts Payable. UCLA Accounts Payable has been severely backlogged as well. It's been like this since last quarter. Last quarter, they said that they were about 6 months behind-ish in requisitions. And I think that the situation has not gotten too much better in terms of the speed with which you'd be able to pull money out for the general fund. However, for purchases of items that do need to be made through the general fund, please speak to me directly, because we have a contact within MAE that will help us buy things and help expedite the process. However, this only applies to items. This does not apply to anything related to food or anything of that sort. So you can't, it would have to be specifically for like physical items. And the process flow for the withdrawal from the general fund is similar to the one previously. Fill out the disbursement request, reimbursement request form, get it signed by Professor Pilon, email that to MAE, they approve it, and they send it to a UCLA accounts payable. And UCLA accounts payable processes it, and eventually they send out the check as well. So other definitions are reimbursement check. So the reimbursement check is, choosing the option if you already paid out of pocket. And it's the one we all know and love. It's the one we're all really familiar with. It requires you to attach your receipts. And when you submit it, please, please, please make sure that you have enough money in your account to cover the cost. You can do this by checking the USAC budget report. We'll go into that a little bit later in the slides. But yeah, please use the usual process. Also, this comes later in the slides. Today, we'll only be skimming over that, but since you do have access to the slides, please, it's broken down very nicely. Just please look at that. Another thing is an invoice. So there's a distinction between an invoice and a purchase order. An invoice is a direct payment to the vendor, and an invoice is something that you have to speak to the vendor about first. Usually it comes with the vendor already having sold you the item, or they've already sent you the item. You just haven't paid for them yet, or you haven't paid for the item yet. And invoices are very specific. So if you do submit something that's an invoice, it needs to be an invoice, not a quote, not an estimate, not an approximation, as opposed to a purchase order, which is simply an agreement that allows the vendor to charge SGA directly. So for purchase orders, you haven't necessarily bought the item yet. You haven't shipped it out. They're still waiting on you to pay them. And what a purchase order does is when submitting it, it lets SGA know that SGA needs to use the money in the account to pay for, or to pay the company that you're buying from directly. So again, you have to check with the vendor to make sure that they accept the payments from SGA, because some don't. And the vendor, in that discussion you have with them, will provide you with some quote or estimate, and you submit that to SGA with your requisition form. And this is just somewhat, this is just like a sample invoice, what it looks like. Over here on the left, you'll see the address of the company. It should have a lot of company info, such as their name, like their actual formal name, their address for mailing purposes, possibly a phone number, possibly an email with which you can contact them. And normally they'll also have some invoice ID tracking number, or a purchase order number, or a purchase order date that'll help identify the specific purchase order or invoice request that you're asking of them. Yeah, and you need to coordinate this all with the vendor directly. And normally, in an ideal world, invoices and purchase orders are prioritized by SGA for processing, but right now, due to backlogs within their system, there is basically no longer a priority queue. So as a result, we only recommend invoices and purchase orders for large orders that you cannot pay out of pocket for. Okay, we'll move on a little bit quicker from now. Cash advance. Cash advances are when you request money from the student SGA beforehand from an account that already exists. And cash advances are generally made out to individuals, so not to vendors or stores. This is, you request money from SGA beforehand so that you can purchase the item that you need to buy with the money that you already have, or the money that they just gave you. And receipts from the purchase must be submitted within 2 weeks of the day that the check is picked up. They're very, very picky about this. And if you request any money that is not spent, you have to return that money to SGA, usually via check. So they have a lot of oversight into this. They just want to make sure that you're not stealing money from them. So if you do a purchase order, you have to keep this in mind. You have to adhere to these rules. or else you'll get into some academic trouble. Honorary payments are payments to an individual, similar to a stipend. Yeah, so honorarium payments are basically like stipends. They require you to attach your tax info, and there's a contract involved. And generally, they're used to pay for student labor if the TGI grant money for that account allows it. But they're kind of up in the air right now because of the TGI Student Support Fund, and which these are payments that are provided by TGI for sustainability work on campus. And right now, TGIF has been trying to shift from honorarium payments to the Student Support Fund. However, they happened once last quarter. There have been no updates for this quarter. There have been no updates for whether it's even going to continue into the future. So it's, once we get more concrete information, once the new TGIF chair comes in, or yeah, the new chair comes in, or new board comes in, they'll make the decision on that. But in terms of the ones from winter quarter, please expect payments to go out completely by week 8. And now these are the things that we went over in the previous finance info session. We could just go over them very briefly again. So accessing our services, please follow the link to the services spreadsheet where you'll see these rows. And these are where you can find all the services that we provide. Knowing your finances is just seeing how much money is in your account by looking at the finance database or checking USAC's budget report. Sources of funding, funding opportunities. Again, in these slides, they have been broken down very, very clearly and concisely, step by step, learning how you can find funding opportunities in the spreadsheet, the fund application form, and for submitting a funding application. And this is the form that you see on TGIF's website for submitting a funding application from them or for them. And here, there are just some tips for the funding applications themselves. And accessing your TGIF fund or general funds, please go to the services spreadsheet, click on the links. All the steps in the process are broken down very, very clearly. If you click on the link, follow where it goes and read the instructions, it'll take you to a couple different pages and a couple different resources. But if you just follow it step by step, and just really adhere to the procedure, it should go smoothly. If anything doesn't, please just ask me directly. Yeah, so here I say please wait at least 3 weeks for TGIF and SJ to process disbursement. Again, yeah, 3 to 4 weeks. Yeah. Again, also here, withdrawing from the general fund is just not recommended at the moment because of how long it takes. However, for food items, we can definitely withdraw from the general fund for anything related to food. And please see there's a section in the policy manual with procedure from withdrawing from the general fund. If you need to take money out from the general fund, please follow this procedure. So it's just done to make sure that we don't overdraw from the general fund, that we have money in there left over for emergency use, and the allocation that each project or each team gets for money from the general fund. and yeah, reaching out to us again. Please make sure you're on the Discord. Make sure you've done the role checking and you followed all the procedure and the onboarding. So you have access to the service channels and you can message me. You can message finance. You can also directly message me. I'm always available. And you can ask things like, has my disbursement request been processed yet? When can I expect to be reimbursed? Will you be reimbursed if you purchase whatever product? If you need help with sponsorships or fund applications, we're also always here to help. Okay, that'll be all for me.